What if you woke up one day and all forms of digital media were erased? I'm talking movies, I'm talking TV shows, I'm talking the online internet as we know it. Media is completely gone overnight. Now, what would you purchase to own personally? What movies would you have? What shows would you have on hand to binge whenever you want? There's no streaming services, there's no Netflix, there's no HBO Max, there's no Peacock, there's no insert streaming service here for you to have an entire collection of films on hand for free, or for a limited price depending on what service you're talking about here. What would you have? What would you physically own? What would be something you're proud of owning, and what would be in your collection? In this modern day where everything's on streaming services, I think that the idea of personal ownership on this front is almost dead as we know it. And I'm talking more from a movie perspective or from a show perspective. I'm talking actual physical copies. I'm talking DVDs. VCRs were a thing for forever. The actual tapes, these black rectangles you would have to rewind every time you would put them into the TV to get them to work. We don't have that anymore. It's all online. Everything's digital. All this media that was made in bygone eras and in past times is now available for us at the click of a mouse. Wanted to say a click of a finger or touch of a finger, but that's not necessarily how YouTube and our PCs and laptops work. And when you look at media, now what would you have? What movies off the top of your head would you want for your collection? And I'm saying movies generally, but once you start to get into the nitty-gritty of it, it gets even more interesting. What movies would you have related to Christmas for different genres? Mention the holidays. You could do Thanksgiving even. Halloween. Horror. I just said horror because I'm a big horror movie fan, and I love watching horror movies in theaters now. It's become a pastime of mine over the past near year, fully. What would you own? And let's say you had a budget to start your collection. Maybe $100, $200, depending on how much you want to have in your collection. You can maybe double or triple, maybe even quadruple that amount. But what would you get? What would be your choices? Why would you have your choices? Would there be specific choices for, again, checking down the list of the genres? You want to have 2 movies of action, 2 thrillers, 2 horrors, 2 holiday movies. And I'm just saying, too, as a figure of speech, you could have as many as you want. But what would you physically own? And with these movies, they don't have to be movies that everyone has. You could talk about the classics. I could make an entire list saying Citizen Kane, Casablanca. I think I said that correctly. Casablanca, I hope. And Singing in the Rain, other classic movies. Singing in the Rain would be on my list for sure. That's a movie where as much as I could have a day where in my head I could be thinking, oh my God, this is the worst day of my life. What am I going to do? I could come home, load that movie up, watch it, and by the end of the movie, I'd be happy. I wouldn't be dwelling about the past. I'd be happy with how I feel in the moment watching that movie and in the recent and near aftermath of finishing it. What are movies that would be on your personal list that maybe not everyone would have off the top of my head for me? And again, I'm just spouting examples I think of Alpha back in 2018, where it's focused on how man domesticated wolves, and wolves obviously became dogs. And the entire story through that, and yes, it's a little different. It's focused more on the theatrics. The actual story is pretty simple. You don't have to look too much into it. And I think as of now, I'm the only person besides my dad, because he went to go see it with me in the theaters, who really knows and talks about how good that movie is. That's a personal choice for me. You have some movie like that, some movies like that, that you resonate with specially. Write that down. Put them in your collection. Do you look at building this collection also through an entire company genre, through series? My family personally, as far back as my grandma on my mom's side, huge Disney fans. We have a lot of what's on Disney Plus in DVD format. We have a lot of those movies. We would have shelves filled with these movies that whenever we wanted to, we could just put the VCR, because again, we're talking about back then, or DVDs into the players and watch whenever we want. We own that near whole library. And nowadays, I just pull up Disney Plus and watch whatever I want. But if Disney Plus wasn't a thing, that collection is still there. What series, again, you go for? I'm not a big TV guy. I know some people off the top of their head would say, oh, I'd want all of Breaking Bad. I would want just a random shout. I see memes about it all the time. I've only watched an episode or two. Think of House MD, Hugh Laurie, great show. Think of Game of Thrones. I know it ended a little weird. I've only seen that final episode. Yeah, I'm a little weird on that front, but I'm sure people would love to have that series as a personal ownership, as a part of their personal collection. Then there are film sagas. Star Wars, obviously. I lean more Harry Potter. I would want all 8 Harry Potter movies. I might throw in as an extra treat all the Lord of the Rings. I haven't watched the Lord of the Rings in quite some time, but I'd probably want those 3 movies. Maybe also the Hobbit trilogy, that in the general timeline is before Lord of the Rings. Maybe I'd want those 3 movies as well. Again, I haven't watched them in some time. I need to look them back sometime later this year. I need to watch it again. But it's personal collections. I feel like this topic is more so talked about nowadays with music. I forget the name of this specific creator off the top of my head, but he switched, and for reference, he works as a DJ for weddings and parties. He personally switched listening to music for a whole month from online streaming services, Spotify, Apple Music, whatever you name, whatever you use, and he put everything that he personally wanted onto a little iPod. Because remember those? Remember iPod music players? They were a thing. And then eventually, he made the full switch. It's only on that iPod, and rather he moved everything over to a jailbroken iPod that will not go out of date, because, Apple, iOS, likes to continuously update to the point where you have to buy new stuff. But he found a way, and he found someone else out there who was able to hook him up with one that won't be the case for. And that's his collection. I think the physical ownership part is lost. As someone like me, who, as I can get this wire wrapped around and off of this little wrist part of me, someone like me who has seen more than 40 movies in the last calendar year. If I had to purchase them in a physical copy, I'd probably only choose a handful or so. And keep in mind, when you're purchasing the physical copies, it's a lot more money than, let's say, a $3 rent on Prime Video, or however much it costs to rent, or what I've done in the past, and I could say is an option if you don't want to purchase physical media, is purchase the movie on, let's say, a Prime Video. Spend that extra money, and so it's always associated with your account. That's not the topic that I'm really going for, at least for the physical side of things. But it's digital ownership. It's ownership in general. Media ownership has shifted so much in the years. My dad has an entire room with, off the top of my head, if I could estimate, it's got to be at least 100 plus movies, maybe near 150, in drawers. He has a giant bookshelf. It's filled with movies. And he has his TV set up, the upstairs portion of the house. And that's his, I'm not saying it's his office, he has an office, but it's essentially his study. Once it would get to a certain time of the day, it would get a little late, he'd go up and he'd watch a movie from his collection. Another part of that as well, I only got to kind of reference, and not necessarily reference, but see it again recently, because my dad's a huge horror fan. It's funny how now I'm getting into horror, where my dad, he's been into that his whole life. And he's recommending me movies, and it's movies he has ownership of, he has the DVDs of, and it's putting them into the player, and oh wow, this is a movie that has its own home screen, where I have to press play and I could jump from scene to scene. For a while, I actually forgot what that looked like in life in general, because, I'd go to the movies, but a lot of the movies, I'd see them in the movies, and then maybe I wouldn't watch them after. I kind of forgot what a home screen looked like for quite some time. And that's ownership. That's another little cherry on top, I guess, of the ownership. How are they putting them together? How are they putting those home screens together? Are they making it look as good as possible? If it's an older movie, does it look dated? Before the new Running Man came out with Glenn Powell, I watched the original. My dad had it, he owned it, and he said, hey, you should watch this. I ended up watching it. And all the pre-movie graphics and the music and the way they were shifting the scenes, it felt like I had gone through time travel. Old school 80s music, the pillowy graphics. Can I call that pillowy? I'm not sure. But that was fun for me to look back on and go, oh, yeah, this is how it was before. It's easy to get caught up in how streaming services just have all these movies on demand for us whenever we want, as long as we pay a subscription fee. And I have hundreds of movies that I want to watch. That being said, if a movie's not on a streaming service, I tend not to watch it. If I have to pay money to rent a movie, I just throw it into this giant pile. Or on Letterboxd, it stays in the watch list for quite some time. I wait till it comes on the streaming service. We take that for granted now. We take that for granted, how so many movies from so many eras, and with so many different actors and actresses and directors, filmmakers overall, they're at our whim. We could watch almost whatever we want at the click of a button. That's not how it was back then. You would have to own VCRs and DVDs to watch movies. If your friend had a movie, you would have to go over to their house to watch the movie. You wouldn't be able to just search it up and find it on a streaming service or rent it online for $5. Or, you know, how Netflix used to be before Netflix really became Netflix. You would pay the subscription fee, at least I think it was a subscription fee, but you would pay to get and rent the movie, and then you'd watch it and you'd return it. Same thing with Blockbuster. Remember Blockbuster? I remember Blockbuster. We don't have that anymore. And I think as much as we don't have that anymore, and as much as it's gone away, we should be conscious of it. We should be conscious of that being something to keep in mind. We should keep it in mind. All these times we go to a theater, maybe you think the movie's really good. Maybe ask that next question. And it's not something you have to do for every movie. This is just something I'm throwing out. Ask that question: would I purchase a DVD copy of it? Because I think another factor of purchasing the media, you have to really like it. If you don't like the movie or the show that much, and you just watch it, let's say on TV or in a theater, you just go on with your life. But if you love it so much, you want to own it, that's the next step. That's another $15, $20 charge depending on what version you get: Blu-ray, 4K, Dolby HD audio. Just think about that. How many times have you not only gone to the theater, and just to reframe the question, how many movies in the last few years, maybe since the pandemic came out, because the pandemic was when everything shut down, and you know, that seems also like a bygone era now, because we just go wherever we want now. Everything's essentially normal. How many times since movie theaters opened up after the COVID-19 pandemic, again, it's 5 years now where we've had that time to live, how many movies have you seen in theaters and actually thought about going out and buying a digital copy? You probably don't have that many. Or maybe you do. I don't know. But again, it all comes back to ownership. Media ownership has changed, and it's become almost a lost art. Think about it more whenever you're consuming media, whenever you're on your phone, whether it be on YouTube, whether it be on Netflix, Max, whatever streaming service you have. And maybe there will be a time where this happens. Maybe there will be a time where everything switches again. I'm not saying we're going to go back to DVDs, but you never know in this life. Maybe make a list. Make a list of movies you'd want to own. And just, once you have that list down, focus on building it. Because you never know the time where something happens, something changes, and I'm not being like a doomsday person. But build a collection. Build a personal collection. That's the main takeaway. Build your personal collection of media. TV, movies, personal videos, you name it. And think about how all of that has a reason for you to choose. Because at this day where we can choose whatever we want, it's the movies and the overall pieces of media that we have so much love for and we own ourselves that really bring out the special stories in our lives.
Bonus content.
Well, that's the first movie video I've done. I think within the last year, 2025, I'd probably want to purchase weapons Actually, I'll pull up my letterbox right now because I have way too much on here. Phone cameo again. Actually, you're seeing my phone for once. I know I made a cameo, a very small one, last week, but let's see my list. My list for 2025. Out of the movies I saw last year, and I watched 40. I almost watched a movie that came out in 2025 per week. Let's see. I would probably want to own Weapons, K-pop Demon Hunters. If you know, you know. Avatar: Fire and Ash, and while we're at it, the entire Avatar trilogy. I hope James Cameron makes some more money and is able to complete this saga. I'm the only one of my friends that's actually seen it this far back here, which is interesting. Maybe Begonia, I think, would be on there. And this is just out of my top 10. Novocaine I really like. That's a fun movie whenever you get to watch it. Black Bag's a maybe. Bring Her Back and Marty Supreme are maybes. Sinners a maybe. And I haven't even gone into like the One Battle After Another's and the Supermans and the Zootopia 2s on that list. Those would be the movies I'd have. What movies from last year would you want to personally buy and have ownership of? Just let me know in the comments. February's next. Got some ideas for videos talking in and about love. Maybe if I want to switch back to movies, I will. I have all these ideas in a giant journal, but I try to just pick one out each week. We'll just have to see. You'll have to see and wait. Bye now.